Welcome to MSP Unplugged, sales tips and best practices with my good friend, Dean Reid Jr. I am your host, Paco LeBron. This is our live show where we discuss different ways to run your IT business, whether it's managed services, consulting, break fix, or anything in between. Let me introduce my co-host. We have Dean Reid Jr. over at Datto. Dean, how are you today?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me, Paco. I appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate you joining me here. And then, just as a little bit of a tidbit for everyone here, I asked Dean to come on as a personal favor because me and him have done a lot of good business before. He was my former rep at Datto, and just all around good guy. And we'll go into details on why I thought he would be a great speaker here to talk about sales tips and best practices for MSPs out there. But before we go into that, I want to go ahead and talk about my favorite call to action is TechCon Unplugged. It's coming in September 17th to the 19th of this year at the Aloft Hotel, Chicago O'Hare. Learn from amazing panels to help maintain and improve your business. Meet vendors to find products and services that can save you time and money. Rub elbows with your peers in the community. Now, what I will want to say is that we have an all-star lineup of vendors that are going to be there. We have not only some of the ones that we had previously visit us in 2019 when we were at Grand Rapids, but we have quite a few new ones that are appearing as well. We have not only ThreatLocker that'll be joining us, Solutions Granted, Datto, of course, will be rejoining us as well. But one new vendor that I'm highly really excited to have here coming up here shortly, and a lot of you all have requested it, is Synology. They have decided to come by to really help out with the show. So that'll be some great opportunity for those that are trying to figure out how to quasi get into just improving the ability of having equipment. I know a lot of you have been talking about getting some face to face with that company. So we were able to get them going. Plus, we actually have something of a little bit of a teaser that's coming in on Friday. So if you have not purchased your tickets or you haven't booked your flights, I would highly suggest to get there by 1 o'clock. But we got a little something that's coming up in the works. I can't really say so far because we got to get some confirmation because we hit a little bit of a couple obstacles on it, but it will be worth your time. It will basically deal with productivity from a particular company that we all use that starts with an M possibly. So we'll go ahead and start from there moving forward. But if you haven't purchased your tickets, again, head over to techonunplugged.com, buy your ticket. It is $199. We have made this event as convenient as possible to get to. The hotels are $124 a night. It is free parking. We have been able to cover all of the food with the ticket price. We're going to have a great Friday night and Saturday night social. Friday night we'll be at the hotel. Saturday night we're going to actually close down the restaurant and pub called Five Roses Pub, and we'll be having a good time having that rubbing elbows, peer-to-peer conversation, because that's really what makes a conference go around and makes it worthwhile. So again, head over to techconunplugged.com and we hope to see you there. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and move into our key topic, which is sales tips and best practices. As I kind of talked about earlier, I did ask Dean to come on the show here for a couple of reasons. One, as a Datto partner, me and Dean have talked back when he was our rep a couple years ago, prior to COVID. And Dean, all around great guy. I met Dean when we were at attending a Datto roadshow. He actually reached out to me prior to that just to get to know me a little bit better. It was a lot more of a better experience that I have had, and I think that just constitute to the shift of focus that Datto has been trying to do to try and really help their partners. And again, this won't be a full Datto show. Datto has, we're going to schedule some shows for them later on, specifically to dedicate to their core products. Here, Dean is just doing me a favor so we can really get into how can we get MSPs, IT business owners, better at sales, get some sales tip, best practices to really help, especially now that we're coming out of this post-pandemic era. What are things that have worked in the past that may not work now that he has experienced, and other things as well, because Dean talks to many IT providers, all different sizes over the last, I don't know how many years, but we're going to go into a little bit to know more about Dean. So Dean, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of an intro? Where are you based out of? How many years you've been in the business so far?
So I'm based out of Norwalk, Connecticut. That's where the headquarters of Datto is. I've been with Datto for the past 8 years and I think 3 months at this point. So I think I was employee 150. Now we're at 2,000 employees plus. So I've been in the channel for quite some time now.
Very cool, very cool. And then, why don't you go ahead and give me kind of like a short origin story on like what prompted you to get into sales? Was sales kind of your first thing that you wanted to do, or is it something you kind of just fell into?
It's something I kind of fell into. I got in sales back in 1999. So I know I don't look that old, but yeah, I was 20 years old when I first got into sales. I actually started working for Radio Shack, and I remember when I got the job, I was like, I just need a job, and I'm going to look for another job, but I need a job. So I started working at Radio Shack, and they were talking about they're going to give you a $300 draw plus commission. So I didn't know what that meant. And what it meant is if you didn't make $300 in commission, you just got $300 at the end of the week. That's your paycheck. If you made more than $300 in commission, then you get your commission and you don't get that $300. So the first week or the check I got was the $300, and after that, it was always way over that. And by my third month ever in sales, I was the number 3 best salesperson in all of Connecticut at Radio Shack. So I was in love with sales, and from then I just been doing it ever since then.
Very cool, very cool. And then I know that you have been kind of bouncing around at Datto. You've been obviously promoted quite a few times. What are you doing over there now?
So right now I'm a channel sales executive. So I help my partners basically grow their business. Whether it's through Datto or just me just giving them new ideas and giving them different perspectives on how to look at their business. So that's kind of what I do right now. So it's more of a strategic role.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I think exactly like you said, I mean, I think when we last talked, it was probably in 2019 prior to the pandemic. We grabbed lunch here by the office and we were just kind of going back and forth and just, wrapping back and forth on ideas of how we can improve just my all around business book of business,
Yep.
how to increase, profits, understanding, who our demographic was, because at the time, we still focus on this 20 users or less, how do we focus on getting them to the cloud? Cloud is really going to be the number one thing to focus on. And really just taking that time to understand, what we were about and highlight not only just Datto products that at the time that would probably beneficially help, but also other ideas of how to get leads in and how to talk and how to frame the conversation. And at the time, it was just myself. I was a solo business owner. Obviously, fast forward, I've grown in employees, but that conversation specifically was for my size. Going from there. So why don't we just jump right in and talk about maybe some of the trends that you've seen that may be a way of understanding. What are some top 3 ways that you've seen MSPs or IT business owners that they can find new clients right now?
So there's a couple. So the 3 that come to mind, one is Reference USA. So Reference USA, if you have a library card and you log into your library, you can find Reference USA. Now, Reference USA is not in every library, but you can call whatever state you're in. So you're Chicago, right, or Illinois. You call up your Chicago, say, hey, can you tell me any Illinois library that has Reference USA? And they'll tell you which one it is. You call them, you get a library card for that particular one. When you go into Reference USA, you can actually find I don't know if you're familiar with Sales Genie. Sales Genie is like it's a place where you get leads. So you basically can find out if they're $1 million clients, $500,000 customers, 5 million, whatever they make, what type of businesses they have, and you can really get granular. So you can target exactly who you want to call. That's a paid service. But if you go through Reference USA through the library, it's actually free, and it's the same exact thing as the Sales Genie. So instead of paying $150 a month, you just call your library, find out about Reference USA, and you can use that to gain a list so you can start acquiring new clients that way. The second way.
So really quick, I want to add on to that as well,
Yeah.
because for a lot of people that may not know, I actually used to work for the Chicago Public Library from 2002 to 2007 for 5 years. And exactly what you just said. So Chicago Public Library has really increased their digital presence, and Reference USA is included, which is now known as Data Axle now, I believe.
Yes, which was formerly Sales Genie. Exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes,
So
yes.
so something happened in there, but you do definitely get it in Chicago, in Illinois with the library card. But there is a program that I don't know if other states will have, is libraries try to spread the wealth and try to have partnerships with other libraries as well. So what I would suggest is, after you find out if there's a particular library in the state that you're at and you can get to that's outside of your city, ask if they have something called a reciprocal library card. Now, what a reciprocal library card is, what we call it here in the city of Chicago, is the ability to take out materials or gain access to resources from another city's library. So essentially, if we're a resident of the city of Chicago, we can go ahead and get a library card from here. However, if you go to, let's say in this case, Skokie Library or Evanston Library, if we go to that library, we may have to pay to get a library card because we're not a resident there. But with a reciprocal library card, there's a partnership that they can go ahead and reference the Chicago database in some way, shape, or form, create a library card for you in that city, and then now you don't have to pay for it because there's a partnership that's built to that. So that's something to ask about. If your local library does not have it, you can always ask if that other library has a partnership with your library and see if they have the ability to do that. And that's one other piece to do to try and gain access to Reference USA. And I've used Reference USA quite a few times, and it's very granular on the details you can get, and really just grabbing that data and start cleaning it out, visiting LinkedIn's, understanding profiles, things like that. But great suggestion.
Absolutely. And I didn't know about that reciprocal library card. I wrote that down. So that's good to know.
Yeah, little tidbits from back in the day.
Absolutely. So the second thing I would say is a LinkedIn Sales Navigator. That's another way you can acquire clients. Obviously, you're going to have to pay for that. But with LinkedIn Navigator, you can find out what roles everyone in the company is. You can it's even going to tell you who are the decision makers. So you know exactly who you need to talk to. You can find out who the gatekeepers are. And one thing I would suggest, right, because social selling is huge, right? I mean, cold calling is not dead. I mean, some people want to say cold calling is dead, and we can argue on that, right? I don't think cold calling is dead, but social selling, that's just another avenue. So I would recommend anyone to grab this book, which is called The £1,000,000 by LinkedIn, by this guy named Daniel Disney. He's a big guy on LinkedIn. I've been following him for years, but he wrote this book. This book is awesome to tell you how to social sell, kind of how to approach people. You don't want to just spam people with your products and services, but just how to engage them, and then how to take them from LinkedIn, maybe get them onto an email or even get them onto a webinar. So that's a book that I would highly recommend. So I think using LinkedIn Navigator is another way to acquire customers. And the third way is referrals to your existing client base. A lot of times, my partners, I'm like, well, have you talked to your existing clients who've been with you for 5, 10, 15 years? Well, no. Well, why not? I mean, these are the people that trust you. I mean, if they're going to give you a referral, they're going to give you a good referral, right? Because they trust you and they like you. That's easy money. That's low hanging fruit. So I think referrals from your existing clients. So if you haven't done that, go back to your existing client base and actually get those referrals from them.
Both of those very good points as well. I mean, I think, going back to the LinkedIn, I think you hit it on the head, where I think a lot of people understand that there is a lot of just a lot of social selling that's huge right now, but a lot of it is very spammy. Like it's very, selling services, right away, I can already tell when someone asks to request me from a profile, hey, seeing you're doing great things, would love to connect. And I'm just waiting for the sales pitch, right? And you just kind of see from there. And you right away, and my biggest thing, if there's one thing you could take away, if you're going to be requesting clients, don't sell them in the first message that you send to them.
Absolutely not.
And actually be genuine in what your connection is, because this is a great piece to understand that you are trying to put your best impression forward. And same thing with social selling. There's a lot of people that are comparing social selling with cold calling, which I think two are a little bit different from each other. Cold calling is a game of numbers when you're working on the strategy and getting into that target market. But the biggest piece of that is with cold calling, they pick up, boom, hang up, call it from a day. With social selling, you got your picture, you got your information. So, if you're doing something really, if you rub that person the wrong way, people don't remember what you say, people remember how you made them feel. And so that's the biggest piece of that as well. But one thing I will put on there for LinkedIn, which is what I learned through a cold calling service called Managed Sales Pro. Carrie Simpson actually had put out a free book out that if you sign up for her newsletter, if I'm correct, you can get it. And if I'm completely wrong, apologize, but it's over at Managed Sales Pro. I know that she does have quite a bit of webinars. But one of the things in that book was building a referral engine, being a referral revenue engine that allowed you to build a referral program that allowed you to get up your existing clients to help you with referrals. Because a lot of people there's two things. One, asking for referrals is hard. But two, you just don't want to say, hey, do you have any referrals? Because you don't come to mind, right? And it's kind of the same thing with like BNI. You got to come up with things that when they hear certain things that are triggered, you come to mind for that piece. So it could be monetary in the bottom of your invoices that say, hey, we'll give you a credit on your next invoice if you refer us a partner up to X amount. You can, what I like to do is go visit my connections that are my clients, connect with my clients, but then go into their connections and see if there's anybody that's a fit for me. And then if there's someone that's there, I will then ask them, hey, is there any chance you could connect me with this person? I think it would be a great fit for our service. So now you've given them something tangible where if you're, again, like Dean mentioned, if they trust you and they understand, they should be more than willing to go ahead and send that email out or send that connection and then also speak with that contact to see if they can make that introduction as well. So those are two pieces that we've done as well, have been really powerful.
And just to piggyback off of social selling, if you remember, Paco, how you and I started talking was I actually wrote you on LinkedIn.
Yep.
You something I forget what it was. You were on the 40 under 40. What was the thing?
It was a publication called Negocios Now. I was ranked on their 2016 list of 40 under 40 for Chicago.
Yes, so I remember that's how I entered. I said, hey, it's awesome, glad that you, and I didn't come up spammy at all. It was basically congratulating you on that. And then next thing I know, we started talking, and I met you in Chicago. Like you said, we went out for lunch, and the rest is a wrap. But again, that just shows you I wasn't spammy. I wasn't trying to I was being genuine because I really was genuine. I was like, that was really cool.
Right.
And I think you felt that when I actually sent that message to you.
And it's funny that you say that too, because when we did connect, once you got assigned as our account manager as well, the one thing that stuck out to me, and which is why I wanted to engage with you, is that you're like, hey, it's super cool that what you're doing here on where you're ranked. I'm half Puerto Rican myself. And so you made that connection as far as what I was cool. So, and for everyone that doesn't know, in the Puerto Rican culture, whenever you find another Puerto Rican, you're automatically family and that's your cousin. So that's kind of how it all kind of works, which I have actually a funny story on a client that I onboarded that I'll tell some other time, but found out that we were related at that point after we were onboarding. So it was super, super crazy. But it's that type of thing where like I felt the genuineness, what was going on. You put yourself into that story. It didn't seem you were looking for me to make sales. It wasn't trying to get there. And as we grew in our conversation, it just, obviously populated from there. So definitely great pieces of advice on that one. And definitely, I just checked it out. I wanted to see if there was an Audible book, but it looks like there's just a paperback for $1 Million LinkedIn Message. So we'll make sure we have that link in the show notes as well. Kind of deriving from that, we've talked about, those three ways of how, MSPs and IT business owners can find clients right now. What have you seen work in the past? And then more importantly, what things you've seen in the past that may not work now. So maybe one and one, and then we can kind of just see where the conversation goes from there.
So what I've seen that used to work, that doesn't work today, is trying to get slick with closing techniques. When I started in sales 20 years ago, over 20 years ago at this point, it was always about having that closing technique, right? ABC, always be closing. We look at all these movies, Boiler Room, is another movie that they always talk about, always be closing. And, used to go I remember taking a bunch of different trainings and, learning different, if somebody says this is what you want to say to kind of combat that. That doesn't work in today's day and age. Buyers are way more educated than they were, 20 years ago. And the reason being is because all they got to do is go online, right? So you can try to be as slick as you want. That doesn't work. And it feels disingenuous. So I think trying to close somebody in the way that we used to do it 20 years ago it doesn't work in today's market. So if you're doing that, stop it.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing because when I used to work at a automotive software firm, there was a big piece of that where they were saying that how the internet has provided so much information now. And, it's to a point where, in the pre-owned automotive market, the stat at the time in 2000, whatever it was, 14, was a person before would, walk the lot and visit a couple dealerships and things of that nature. Now, I think it's changed with Carvana and some of these in Vroom and some of these other places, but they were saying how, at the time, a person is only walking into 1.5 dealerships. And so the question always became, well, what does that mean half? Well, because the question is when that person shows up, either you were their number one pick or their number one pick messed up. So
Yep.
there's always that 50% of where that landed. So you had to do your best to come up with the best deal because they found you and they're trying to get your business because they saw that there was something reputable. They pulled all the information, things like that. And then the other piece that, you mentioned really to highlight is, people hate to be sold to, but
Yes.
people love to buy.
Yep.
And that's such a mentality that I learned from I forgot the author, but it was the Little Red Book of Selling, I believe it was called.
Oh, I know who you're
Uh,
talking about. He's from North Carolina. He always
yeah,
wears the. I know who you're talking about. I
yeah.
can't.
So
Yeah.
so my good friend Pat McMullen at my last job referred that book to me, and it was something of that phrase that always stuck with me because again, people love to buy, but they hate to be sold to. And this is a big piece on why that tactic of ABC is, always be closing is just not working anymore. But deriving from that, what has worked in the past, but maybe works now or has been modified to work now, and maybe any lessons learned on if that had to be modified or adjusted from that sales pitch.
Um. Again, going back to cold calling,
Yeah.
I think cold calling is I don't think cold calling is dead. So I think trying to be different in your approach to cold calling. So for instance, what I do, I'd call a bunch of partners. They might never answer the phone. I'll email them. They'll never answer their emails. So what I've been doing is I've been doing video email. So basically, what that is literally it's about 30 seconds or sometimes even a minute. And as soon as they open up their email, they're gonna press play, and I'm right there and I'm speaking to them. Hey, John, this is Dean calling from Datto. Wanted to learn, to see if I can get some time on your calendar. Wanted to learn about some of your business goals, some of your business challenges, and see how I can help you. So it's all about just the approach about trying to help them. And I've seen a lot of success with doing video email. So I just think, again, that's a cold call, but it's a cold call through email through a video, which I think can be very, very effective.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of translates to the old voicemail campaign, right? Where you call after hours because you know that they're closed. Go ahead and leave a voicemail because then now you have the ability to say your entire spiel, and hopefully anything that would be in there would trigger to be able to provide any information or slash a call back
Yep.
to kind of go from there. But is there a service that you've used or that Datto provides you? Like for us, we use Vidyard. And that's kind
Vidyard
of
is
okay.
Vidyard is great. I love Vidyard, but if you want something that's going to be free, then I would use Cloud HQ. So it's free. So the only thing what I don't like about Cloud HQ is the quality of the camera. It's not as
Mm,
great. Vidyard, beautiful. I use the same camera for both, and Vidyard's way nicer than
mhm.
Cloud HQ. But if you don't want to spend the money, Cloud HQ will work perfectly fine.
Perfect. Yeah, I think for us, I think we picked up Vidyard on an AppSumo deal. I think it was at the time when they had it. So I'm not sure if that's still on there, but yeah, it was worth the $59 for us. That's what we use for that to tailor those messages. And all around really great. And then you can also get really crafty and using like some type of captions and stuff like that if you're trying to post or promote those type of videos. I think Clip Scribe or Scribe Clip. Reese Orman over at TechVera has mentioned. I forgot the tool that he used, so we'll make sure I find that, and I'll have John post that in the show notes as well. Are you using anything like that to help with that for
Mm,
those?
No, I'm not using anything. I use either Vidyard or Cloud HQ.
Gotcha.
Um, but with Vidyard, what else you can do with video email is it doesn't always have to be in sales, right? It can
Mm,
be communicating with your existing customers, right? If they call you and ask you, hey, how do you do XYZ? Instead of writing in an email or giving them a call, why don't you create send a video of how to do it? I think having that FaceTime, whether it's in person or through an email, is going to make you much better. So I would suggest that as well. Use it as a way to communicate with your customers in all forms.
yeah, I mean, I think Dan, I believe it's Dan Kunis, and I apologize, Dan, if I got your last name wrong, over at Tech Runner IT. I've watched a lot of his videos, and he just started off with just his office with a whiteboard, He then since moved into creating some other green screens, and he improved his quality of video, but his consistency was always there. He was short, bite-sized nuggets. He was really getting into it. And it just shows that how the power of video really is really a great thing. And for those that hate to be on camera and such, it's the same thing as for those that hate to do cold calling. Sometimes you just have to get over it and kind of get into it. And just because there's nothing more than that takes more precedence than your genuineness versus hiring an outsource model or company to try and do it. It doesn't speak to the same thing.
Exactly. I agree.
Perfect. All right. Well, if I could say, if there was one thing that an MSP could do right now, that would really make a great improvement on their business, and I'll tailor that a little bit, or I'll change it up a little bit, where with any of the common trends or the current events that are happening right now. I think that we are going through, I just did a webinar earlier for a nonprofit where I spoke about the U.S. colonial pipeline. I talk about the JBS meat, and then obviously with the recent Kaseya attacks, MSPs are at a heightened alert right now, and they're just really either nervous, scared. If they weren't before, it's definitely, we're feeling the pressure, right?
Yes.
We're really feeling it right now. What would you say is the one thing that everyone should be opening to right now, or leading with, to really just, one, benefit their clients, but also two, for them to give them at least somewhat of a peace of mind, but really making sure doing justice for both sides, the client and themselves?
So I think, there's a bunch of tools that MSPs lead with. I mean, there's a million different tools. The one thing that I would lead with if I was an MSP would be a business continuity solution. If you don't have a business continuity solution, something that can mitigate ransomware, then you're setting yourself up for failure. Because the problem is in the MSP, you're the one that the client's going to come to and say, why weren't I protected? When you're the one that's supposed to be the IT professional. So with that in mind, I would lead with some type of business continuity solution. So I'll plug in Datto, obviously, because that's where I work and that's what we do really well. But it doesn't matter. You have to have a business continuity solution. If you have to have your client sign a waiver saying, hey, listen, I offered you this and you said no, now I'm not liable. Most times that's going to give them, they're going to take a step back and say, you know what? Let me not sign this. Let me think a little bit more about that. And usually that's going to, bode well for you making the sale. But I think that's the first thing to lead with, because think about it. Ransomware now, I mean, when I was talking about ransomware 5 years ago, right? When I was a sales engineer for 6 years, so I would do a demo with an engineer. I mean, with the sales, with an end client, and I would ask them, "Have you heard of ransomware?" And I would, "No, I haven't." Some people have. Today, everybody knows about ransomware, especially in the last 2 months. It's on news nightly.
Yep.
So I've had partners call me and say, hey, can you do a demo for my clients because they are scared about ransomware? So it's out there. So you need to be leading with that. I think that's first and foremost. And I don't care what it is, but lead with a business continuity solution.
So let's dial into that a little bit, because I think a lot of people confuse BCDR with backup.
Yep.
And I think that there's a big difference between the two, because a lot of people think that backup is their tried and true, and there's the difference, or there's different items to worry about backing up as well.
Yep.
To ensure continuity goes through. So why don't you kind of, for the audience here, maybe either hearing the term for the first time, or maybe assume what the term, and they're relating it to backup, how really an MSP or an IT business owner should view BCDR in its entirety for a client. So
when you look at backup could be you backing up to an external hard drive or backing up to a flash drive, right? That's great, right? But what happens if you happen to plug in that external hard drive or that flash drive and it dies? All your data dies with it. What business continuity says, it's going to keep your business up and running no matter what. It could be an outage locally. It could be something catastrophic like a tornado or hurricane, or it could be ransomware, right? What is your recovery point objective and your recovery time objective? Recovery time objective says, how much time are you willing to lose? Are you willing to lose, a quarter of your data or half of your data? And recovery point objective says, how much data are you willing to lose? So that's a question you're going to have to answer for yourself. But when we're talking about business continuity versus backup, business continuity is going to keep you up and running for hours, days, and weeks and months, where backup is just backing up some files and folders. If something happened with like ransomware, you're kind of out of luck. You're going to be down for a significant amount of time to get your data back. And then sometimes you're not even going to be able to get your data back because it's been encrypted when in the case of ransomware.
Right. And it's so important to understand that I think there has been in the past a lot of pushback on cloud online backup and what to back up, right? And I'm going to go into that a little bit more as well. But now you just cannot leave the data on site if you're doing a backup, right? And if you're copying it can be one of your layers of backup, but it cannot be your only layer of backup anymore. I think Jeff Hallish, who's co-host of the show, who's not here today, he has to work, but he always says if you're not in deploying some type of 3-2-1 rule, it's criminal that you're charging a client backup or some type of continuity recovery process, because you should always have those different layers of protection in case something were to go wrong.
Absolutely.
Now, and I think this also allows for people to understand that, whoever you're partnered with, whether that's Datto or any of the other vendors that are providing this type of solution, is there are different things to back up. There's file level, there's image, but now even more as everyone's going to the cloud, there is now the SharePoints of the world. There is, the Office 365 for emails. You got Google Drive, you have the Gmails, you have Google Sites, which is obviously the version of SharePoint. There's so much now to go into that. Why don't you talk a little bit more on just how cloud has really introduced another layer of not only complexity, but also something that an MSP should think about as well when they're leading for, again, we're dialing it back as this is a sales show. What is the best way for a best practice to lead in for sales to try and get their foot in the door?
So absolutely right with Office 365 or M365 as they change their name, and G Suite. There's a lot of backup solutions out there. Datto has one called Datto SaaS Protection. I feel like if you're going to go into an environment and you're going to pitch them BCDR, right, and you're talking to that client, you find out what their environment's like. After you go through all of those initial discovery questions, learning about their business first off, right, because you want to have a business conversation, not speeds and feeds, right, because they don't care about any of that stuff. Then you start getting into the meat of what their environment looks like. The next question after you figure out what their environment looks like locally, who to use for email today? They're going to tell you one of the two players, right? It's going to be G Suite or it's going to be Office 365. Great. Now you're going to, how many users do you have? Well, I have 50 users. Perfect. Now, when you quote them, you're going to quote them for BCDR and SaaS protection, and you can make it as one line item. So it's included. Instead of putting BCDR as one line item and SaaS protection as another line item, just have it as one line item. You're protecting yourself as the MSP, and you're protecting your client. And I think it's super important to have that stuff backed up, because there was a video done by a guy named Kevin Mitnick, who actually, it's a 9-minute video where he shows you how easy it is to infect Office 365 with ransomware. When I saw this video, it was very compelling and opened up my eyes. Anyone can do it. That's how easy it was. So I think it's super important to have that stuff backed up as well.
So it's interesting, right? Because when I was at DattoCon in 2019, I think he was the guest speaker at the time, or keynote speaker. And he called a guy out from the audience and kind of ran through the whole process. But then he showed, how you can just easily encrypt Office 365 as a whole. And, at the time, I just thought to myself, well, if I didn't have, some type of SaaS backup, how was I going to roll this back? Or how do I even contemplate I'm trying to get this even taken care of? Right.
Yep.
So it was one of those where it just really opened your eyes on that piece. So what we do for our billing, or how we kind of pitch it, is we actually just provide it as an all-in-one, and because we have our managed services agreements where everyone gets it no matter what. Like, that's just a CYA for us, and it has saved us a couple times, and I'll give a story in a minute why that saved us. But two, the biggest piece is that for someone who is trying to figure out how to create more margin with Office 365 or with Google Workspace, yep. You can't really charge more for a license, because the client is pretty smart to know what they're going to get, and they can go directly to Microsoft or Google to get it. But if you are starting out and you're just trying to figure out, by adding not only that as a line, as one package, and I think I got Tom Bull mentioned, like, the branding is so important over at Two River Computers, is understanding that, for us, we call it our protective email security. And so protective email security, which is what we call it, has not only the license of Microsoft, but it also includes the backup of SaaS backup, and it also includes our anti-phishing solution. So all of that, basically, I get my margin off of those two solutions. Plus, the license provides me on how I can resell email and making sure that they're protected as well. So that was one item that we found we were very successful because we can add margins to that security. And now more than ever, especially with everything being backed up through OneDrive, if you have it set up for with Intune to sync and the ability of autopilot, it's more than ever that it's helpful to have something like that as a second layer, because if for some reason the file backup went out on you, or if you had some type of PC to cloud backup that's imaging the PCs as well, you also have this backup of SaaS backup that will help take care of you as well. And the story that I wanted to tell was, we internally here, we had hired an HR contractor to help us out with like paperwork and employee handbooks because we were growing at the time. And so once she left, we deleted her account. I think it was like maybe about a couple of weeks after. And obviously, OneDrive has that 30-day retention.
Yep.
So my assumption, without any clear indication to my office manager, was she was going to download everything locally and get that all saved. Well, come to find out, when we needed to reference the employee handbook X amount of months later, turned out that obviously when I deleted the user, the data's gone as well. And it was shared. It was not downloaded or emailed us directly. So here I am thinking, oh, well, it was a company issued laptop, so that's gone. We've already gone ahead and deleted the user. How the heck am I going to get this data? Now I got to repay them to get all this thing set up again. And then I remembered we had the SaaS backup in place, found the old user, restored it to my office manager's OneDrive, and everybody was happy, including myself. So, it just speaks to, sometimes we make bonehead mistakes internally, and sometimes you got to go ahead, and it saved me quite a bit of money before having to repay to do all that again, which is, like you mentioned, the definite obviously with RTO and RPO.
Yeah, I've definitely deleted a few emails that I didn't think I needed at that time. And, a year later, year and a half later, I'm like, oh, and then I was able to use the Datto SaaS protection to get my emails back. So it's saved my butt a few times. So sure. I get it.
No, yeah. And that's kind of go from there. All right. Well, so, why don't we, let me throw one more before we go into a quick break. If you had to say, one of the biggest mistakes that you've seen MSP partners make, or something you wish that they would change, what would that be?
Work in the business like they're an employee. That's the biggest thing that I see in MSP, because you start a business, you didn't go to business school, right? You started business because you were good at being a tech, and then you start off by yourself, and you're doing everything on your own, right? Mm-hmm. Then you hire people, but you're still doing the same thing you did when you have people to delegate it to. So I think partners keep turning the wrench on their own. They want to, you need to be a CVO, a chief visionary officer. That's the job of the owner. You're supposed to figure out new strategies and different ways to run the business, but not be in the business. I think that's to me, what I see is the biggest problem. I have partners that have no time to even take a call with me. I'm super busy. I got all these things going on. I'm like, hire somebody. Take that off of your plate and focus on sales, because without net new business, your business is never going to grow.
Yep. And I cannot attest to how much that makes sense, because that's what we went through, and we went through it both ways. So, it's a big message that we always spread here on the MSP Unplugged podcast is you always want to figure out how to work on the business, or take time to work on the business than to work in the business, right? Yep. And that's hard when you're a solo business owner. But when you start having employees, or you start having services, or you need to look for services that will help you stay that focus. And so for us, I was figuring out, all right, what's taking up most of my time, right? And so the big piece was back office. So I hired the office manager. All right, I'm getting inundated with all these little level 1 things that I just don't, I can knock them out, but they're taking too much time.
Yep.
So I hired a level 1 remote tech. Then did the HR and et cetera, et cetera. And then, but my next move was, man, it's taking me a lot of time to find and these leads. I need to hire a business development rep. And that was my biggest mistake, because what ended up happening was I offboarded this to not only one, but two business development reps, because one just wasn't working out. The other one, I thought, well, from there, processes weren't as ironed out
Hmm.
in the beginning. So that's why the first one failed, and that was on us. The second one had, but then had a personal issue. So she ended up quitting. So I was left there to figure out, I think actually it wasn't 3 months, it was 6 months actually. 6 months of over $20,000 lost, maybe even more. I'm just throwing that number out there. I don't really know how much we paid her or paid both of them. But basically it was like, all right, what am I actually good at? And what could we need to do? So those next couple months, as we kept going on, we were starting closing clients again. And so my office manager made this comment saying, hey, from September to March or February, I think it was, you know, nothing really was coming in. We were just doing retainers and our existing clients. It was just more hours that were being sold. And then now moving forward from February on, we're closing a lot more monthlies. We were doing, et cetera. So the only difference was I was taking over that sales. So it just really spoke to what you're good at and where you're needed versus where you want to be at.
Yep.
For the sides of the business. So what I ended up doing was hiring a service manager. So as everyone knows, John Dubinsky, who had his MSP in Grand Rapids, who sold in December, was gracious enough to join us. So now he's taking on all of the stuff that I needed to figure out: documentation, disaster recovery plans, incident response plans, making sure everything's. So he's helping control the service side for my business. And now I can lean toward the sales and marketing side, which is where I'm making the most impact for the business. So exactly like you said, you have to figure out how to leverage what you're not good at, or where you need to be, and how to stay there and get rid of the things you want to be, at least maybe even temporarily, to get where you're going from there.
I like it. Makes perfect sense.
So one last thing that came to mind as I was kind of thinking about this is, and I'm just going to pick on Datto. I know Datto has a program that offers marketing development funds and
Yep.
has the ability to leverage their sales team to speak to end customers so that they can have a webinar or in-person show, now that we're all being able to meet in public after this post-pandemic that we have. Um, why don't you tell us a little bit more on what MDF is?
Hmm.
How should an MSP reach out to their vendors, whether it's Datto or anyone they're working with, if a program like this is available?
Yep.
And how can what's the best way to utilize that so that they can ensure that it's beneficial on both the partners end? And obviously, this is great because we don't know who that other partner may be. It might be a security vendor, it may be a backup vendor, it may be everything there. But just MDF in general, and how to leverage a partner to help maybe even create a little trade show for themselves to attract small businesses in the area.
So MDF is the acronym for Marketing Development Funds, and what that looks like is you're going to want to approach whatever vendor you're with. In this case, it could be Datto, and basically you're going to want to ask for a certain amount of money. So you can ask for $500, $1,000, whatever you're looking. And obviously it has to go up to the higher up so they can approve it, and it has to make sense. So what I see that works a lot are breakfast and learns, or lunch and learn. So maybe you rent out a back room of a nice restaurant, and then you bring your prospects to that restaurant, and then you'll have someone like myself or someone from our business development team or someone from another vendor go out and actually present on your behalf, because I feel like this is what I do every day. Another vendor, that's what they do every day. They're the experts in this, right? They know more than you're going to know, so they're going to be able to get the message out better than you can. So leverage them to come out and speak on your behalf. So maybe you just go up for maybe 5-10 minutes, kind of talk about your company and and how you help people, and then you bring on the experts to kind of do the whole education piece. And I see it being, it's a really, really high close rate. And then basically what you're going to do is, from our perspective, we want to know what the return on investment is. Okay, how many people are you expecting at the show? What are you going to do 3 months, 6 months after the show? How are you going to contact these people? Is it going to be are you going to email them? Are you going to call them? Are you setting up meetings with these guys? What does that look like, and how much do you think you're going to make off of these guys to, let's say you got 40 people in the room, and you say you're going to talk to 10 of them, but you only close 3 of them, and that 3 represents, $5,000 in monthly recurrent revenue. Those are types of things we're going to want to know. And I'm sure that's how the other vendors work. But marketing development funds are, I mean, you should, if you can get that, absolutely, because it's going to leverage your money, right? So you're having somebody else, it's other people's money, right? So you're using your vendor's money to help build your business, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and the biggest piece is the experience. Like, if you can't see yourself, hosting a webinar, being in person in a lunch and learn or a breakfast and learn, this is a great opportunity to put your toe in the water. Hey, thank you to everyone, et cetera. And then you leave it off to the expert, but then now you're understanding how this is all kind of working. And not only that, it allows you to get new clients, but B, and we stress this all the time, is being a great partner and
Yep.
being a great partner to that vendor, because if they don't make money, you can't make money. You can't use their tool. They go out of business or they get acquired, whatever the case may be, public trade, whatever, So these are things that will assist you on helping you. And not to say that any of those items are bad, but this is what allows you to maintain a great relationship. So that way, when you do things in the future, and if you think bigger and bolder, they will want to be at your side. Because again, I would like to personally believe all the vendors in the channel that we've partnered with as an MSP are looking out for the best for their partner in MSP to grow. And in turn, we should be rewarding them in their faith in us to help grow their line card as well. So just something to add on from there. But Dean, why don't you think about your last thoughts and kind of what to share in the audience. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take a quick break and talk about, for those that want to support this show. If you would like to support the show, go over to patreon.com/MSP Unplugged. It's about $1 a show where you can make the donation. And what that will allow you to do is not only get news and information before we publish it publicly to our newsletter and through all our YouTube channels and podcasts, but we also have a private Facebook group for only MSPs that allow you to discuss and really talk to your peers. The reason why we created this Facebook group is because there are a lot of IT Facebook groups out there that personally I feel there is a lot of IT business owners that post or reply to certain posts, and they're not the greatest. They are very direct. They make those posters feel stupid, and that their comment like, why didn't you know that? And they state opinions as fact, which is not the case. There's so many different ways to kind of do this job or to do this career and business as you do it. So what we've done is we've decided to create this internal small, but everyone there is all great to each other. But the moment someone makes someone feel that way or kind of says, why are you doing it that way, but in a negative tone, they're immediately banned. Like, because we're there to grow and support each other, not to say, well, you're an idiot for thinking that way, or why'd you do it that way? Shouldn't be done. And we see this all over on those Facebook groups. So we pride ourselves to being able to do so. So great group of people in there, guys and gals. Really great opportunity. It's been a lot of lively conversations in there of all around of what's happening and just collaborating together. And then also we've recently launched our MSP Unplugged Tech Room Talks, hosted by John Dubinsky, which has been more of a free-for-all, just call, talking about anything and everything on a particular topic, whether it's cybersecurity, security stack, things of that nature. So all in all, to try and provide value to those that help support the show. And again, we want to thank those who continuously support us, but you can go ahead and head over to patreon.com/MSP Unplugged. So yeah, Dean, I think I just realized it's already been 50 minutes.
I know that went by fast.
It went by super fast. I love talking to you. I think you always provide some great information, that always is, and this is what I credit you, make you credible about, is that you're always worrying about and talking about what can make someone successful, whatever that it encompasses. Obviously you do work for Datto, and it would behoove you to obviously highlight their services and products and how they benefit the community, but that's not all that drives you, right? And your genuine goal is to help the MSP in IT business, no matter what size, whatever their budget is. There's always something that you can help. I mean, you clearly came with a lot of great resources for today. But do you have any final thoughts or anything that you want to leave with the audience as they watch this?
Yeah. Really quickly, the book that you were talking about that we couldn't remember the author's name, Selling, the Little Red Book of Selling, was Jeffrey
Yes,
Gittimore. So
Jeffrey
just
Gilmore.
for, yeah, I had to look that one up because it was killing me.
Yeah.
So I always start off every presentation that I start off. I always start off with a quote by Benjamin Franklin that says that if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So is exactly what does that mean? That means that if you're not planning to be successful, then you're going to fail to be successful. So my parting gift to everyone is, if you're not good in sales, listen, sales is like a muscle, right? You have to work out your muscles if you want to get big muscles, right? I don't really go to the gym, but I'm just saying, we all know that. Same thing with sales. Sales is something that can be learned, right? Everybody thinks, well, you have to have a great personality to be in sales, and you don't have to have a you don't have to be the life of the party, but you just have to understand how to talk to people and talk about business. Stop getting out the weeds and talking about speeds and feeds. No one cares about your product, your service. They don't even care about you. They care about how are you going to help them with their problem. So I would suggest maybe getting a book, and I'm going to throw out another book that I think is really good. It's called Gap Selling by Keenan. I took this course right here. This is an awesome course, and it teaches you to how to sell and how to sell the proper way, right? So Gap Selling by Keenan, put that in the show notes if you can, Paco. But that's what I would say. I know this is corny, but leaders are readers, right? So
Yep.
just do some research. Read, find salespeople that you connect with and learn from them, and I think it'll help you. That's what's helped me in my career, is just learning from others.
No, and I appreciate that. I think, exactly like you said. I mean, it's to the point of, you always have to be learning. It's a quote from way back to one of our original co-hosts, Chris Carruthers, have mentioned. And, it just speaks to, you always want to make sure you understand how can you benefit your customers, but also understanding that, when you are doing this sale and someone is rude to you or, angry to you, they're not doing it to you. It's whatever you've called them for, or whatever that topic or product or service you're selling, slash, they may be going through some things too, and it's not directly towards you. So don't take it personal
Absolutely.
in that piece. But Dean, my brother, my guy, I appreciate you coming out, doing this show for us.
My pleasure.
I'm just trying to provide a little bit more value to the MSPs here. We always have the vendors on. We always have MSPs to kind of understand what they're going through. I figured this would be another layer to help with sales. I think the biggest piece that really helps is that, there's a lot about marketing and a lot of channels, and marketing is a great piece, but I don't see a lot of sales discussions going on, and I want to make sure that we open that up. So for all the attendees, for the listeners, if this is something that really helped you, you want to hear more of these type of talks when it comes to sales and how MSPs can help sell, definitely let us know. Reach out to us at info@MSP Unplugged. That is our email address for anything regarding to the show. And, Dean, if anyone wants to find a way to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach out to you? Maybe pick your brain, or just, anything in between.
You can contact me on LinkedIn at Dean Reid Jr., DeanReid Jr. You can find me there. You can message me, and I'll be more than happy to talk to anyone. Whatever you need, I'm here to help. I'd love to help the MSP community. That's what I'm here for.
I appreciate you. Well, everyone, you can now come join us on our new time every Tuesday at noon Eastern, 11 Central. Watch live and hang out in the chat room over at youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. Subscribe and hit that notification button so you never miss an episode. Or you can always use your favorite podcasting app. We are on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and you can take it wherever you go. Again, thank you for listening to this episode of MSP Unplugged, and we will see you next time. Thank you and have a great one.
Bye, guys.